Hi, I'm Alex Paulton. I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Talking Timepieces, where we talk about watch collecting and horology. In the last video I shot just a moment ago, I talked about watch collecting, and I also talked about how I'm giving away a copy of my book once a month to random subscribers. So if you want to have a chance to win my book, please subscribe. Currently, I believe it's on Amazon as a Kindle book free for Amazon Prime readers, so you should go grab a free copy yourself if you're an Amazon Prime user. But in general, I think you'll like the book. And so if you don't win a copy, if you email me, I'll email you a PDF of the book because I just want people to read it. So today, we're going to talk about the Bulova Lunar Pilot or Moon Pilot, beautiful piece, and a value chronograph with a space history as well. And what we're going to do is we're going to take it and we're going to do a little comparison with the Speedmaster and see what kind of comparisons we can draw, and I'll talk a little bit about the history of both of these pieces. So let's flip the camera around and take a look. So here we are with the Bulova Lunar Pilot, a very dedicated homage reissue of the original 1971 Bulova Lunar Pilot prototype given to Dave Scott, the commander of Apollo 15 in 1971. And so as you see, it is actually a very accurate copy, or I should say reissue, because Bulova was the company that made the first one in 1971, and Bulova is the company that made this one today. Well, not today, but within the last few years this has been out. The reason that Bulova wanted the watch to have a look very similar to the going space watch of the time, the Omega Speedmaster, they weren't trying to copy the Speedmaster in 1971 beyond trying to get a NASA contractor, get NASA to at least use their watches. They wanted to keep the same look so as not to confuse or spook the superstitious and conservative astronaut corps who selected the Speedmaster. And of course it had to pass all of the tests. The Speedmaster was the only one that passed the tests of the submitted watches at the time. The Rolex did not pass and the Wittnauer did not pass. They had the same movement inside of them, which is why I mentioned them in the same breath. The Daytona didn't have its own movement until after the El Primero version, right? So, which is, another poke at Rolex if anybody wanted to take it. Instead of trying to make their own space watch in the case of Bulova, Rolex pulled a Ramses and called defeat victory and went home and called the Daytona the Cosmograph. But that's why the Bulova Lunar Pilot looks so much like the Omega Speedmaster, because they wanted it to look similar as to make it easy to use by people who were already using this one. So, and I'm going to make a couple of other comparisons as we go forward. One of the most interesting things is, of course, the tachymeter scale, which is on the watch. And sometimes people will mispronounce it as tachometer, but if they're pointing at the edge of the watch, you can pretty much guess that they're talking about the tachymeter scale, which is how do you measure speed over a marked distance. Now, it has no use to a space traveler, astronaut or passenger, but it is a legacy from the Speedmaster, which was originally a racing watch, a race car drivers or track managers watch, so they could time vehicles with it. It just also happened to be an extremely well-made chronograph with a Lamania based movement, so it was rugged and worked very well under all kinds of conditions, which is why it passed all of those tests. Now, The Bulova Lunar Pilot, this was a prototype made by Bulova. They tested it themselves and they found that it would pass all of the tests if NASA would accept it. And so they created the Bulova Lunar Pilot, the original, in 1971, and gifted it to Dave Scott with the only caveat, pretty please take it to the moon, sir. And he wore it as his backup watch. And during a maneuver, a vehicular, he was trying to get back in there, something. Essentially, he pried the crystal off of his Omega Speedmaster, popped it off in some manner, and well, true to the reason they used plastic, it did not fracture coming off of the watch. It just popped off, which demonstrates the safety of the material. However, he could no longer wear that watch going forward in the mission, and he switched to his backup watch, his Bulova Lunar Pilot, which actually went to the moon and is the only private watch confirmed to have been worn on the outside of the spacesuit on the moon. Now, frankly, I have heard that Rolexes have been on the moon, but they were under the spacesuit, and to me that doesn't count. You know, that doesn't mean that the Rolex went to the moon because it was able to handle the environment. It went as a glorified passenger. So, you know, and I like Rolex, but, you know, stay in your lane, okay? Now, in the case of the Bulova Lunar Pilot, it worked very well on the moon, and it came home and still works today in the hands of its current owner, who paid $1.6 million for it at auction recently. So now let's zoom in a little bit on the Lunar Pilot, the Quartz version. And one of the ways you can tell it's a Quartz version, let me zoom in a little bit more. It says right here, 262 kilohertz. And obviously, you're not going to get a mechanical movement to oscillate at that frequency. So it's the same movement that you'll find in the Bulova Precisionist. It's their it's their proprietary in-house high resolution, high exactness, high accuracy. The word was escaping me for some stupid reason. So yes, it's their high accuracy movement. And one of the nice things about it is it gives you some very nice chrono action because of the high beat quartz movement. I didn't think I'd use the term high beat in context with quartz, but there you have it. It is a high beat quartz movement. And I mean, you can get a regular quartz movement that can do tenths of a second splits, but the Lunar Pilot just does it very, very well. One of the things I like about it also, it has a nice depth to the dial. It's a stepped dial. You can see that. Let me turn it a little bit to the side. Maybe you can see it. Oh, yeah, there we go. And I'll zoom in a little bit, and so you can see how stepped out. Oh, too far. Come on, reacquire. Okay, and I'll zoom in, not too close. Okay, there we go. So again, you can see the little 262 kilohertz, and notice the nice stepped dial. The date window is also nice and relatively shallow. Of course, matching background, high legibility. So you have a date, which is something that the Speedmaster doesn't give you. It has a very high legibility in the loom. Now, let me see if I can grab my UV. I'll use that in a second. I'll just put it to the side and remember to do it. And I like the way that it's a step in from the Rehawk with the internal tachymeter scale, and the dial itself is a very nice step in, giving it a nice depth. And then each of the sub-dials has been milled out of the face of the watch, giving it also a nice step into each of the sub-dials, and they have their own finish as opposed to the matte face. Let's turn it back around. If you notice, the 10th second sub-dial stopped spinning to conserve energy, while the main second hand is still moving. So now, one of the things about it, let's turn it this way and take a look. they didn't want to change the look of the face, but one of the ways you can tell they obviously did not want to copy the Speedmaster is these pushers. You could tell from a mile away that this is not a Speedmaster because these pushers are very, very, I wouldn't say unique. There are other watches that have similar style pushers, but among your tool style chronos, who normally have very no-nonsense round pushers, these pusher levers adds a bit of flair to an otherwise toolish watch, and also of course gives you a better opportunity and purchase on the buttons if you're wearing gloves. So in one sense, this is a more practical design than the Speedmaster because the chrono buttons are much more accessible. So let's flip it over for a second because there's something nice on the back. Okay, let me zoom in on that for you all. And let me see if I can get some contrast so we can read it well. There we go. Oh, there we go. And so it says Apollo 15, July 26, 1971 to August 7th, 1971. And it mentioned that it was involved in the EVA because he had, like I said, to switch to his backup watch because he damaged his primary watch. And it also gives various information about its waterproofness. It says high performance quartz. It's actually a really nicely done piece. Now, let's lift this up and zoom out. And let's do a little bit more comparison because as I had recently done a video on collecting and investing and quality versus quantity, and I used these as an example because this is a really nice watch and you can get it on the gray market or pre-owned for 350 bucks, give or take. Okay, now I'm gonna show just for a quick second the lovely back on the back of the Speedmaster. It says, you know, though the flight's qualified by NASA stuff and first watch worn on the moon. So these are both watches that have a true space heritage. Some would say that this is just an homage because it's a quartz watch and not the automatic like the original, but is a watch a movement? Is a watch a design? In this case, I mean, a watch is both. And in this case, pun not intended, this is a reissue by the company that made the original watch with an updated movement. You could look at it that way, that they're using quartz not as a way as to cut costs or to demean the watch or to lessen its value in any way. They actually went to a value add quartz movement, a high beat quartz movement, 262,000 hertz. So the fact that this has a quartz movement cannot be considered a ding against the quality of this piece. This is a very good watch and it's worth every penny, every single penny that you pay for it. Now, for 10 times as much money, you can get this because this is available on the market, give or take 3,500 bucks pre-owned. So depending on what your budget is and what your aspirations are and whether you think watches are important, this is a perfectly legitimate alternative watch. And frankly, there's a good argument to be said for owning both because you could wear this when you want to be a little high speed, and this could be your daily beater that you don't have to worry too much about banging into things, whereas you know, eventually you're going to polish through the face of this thing with the crystal of this thing with polywatch, because I mean, you're not adding material to the Hesselite crystal when you polish those scratches out. So yes, you can polish them out, but try to minimize it. And having another watch with a space heritage that you can wear much more casually, I think is a good alternative. This was lent to me by a friend, but it is making me think about picking one up as a beater because it really is a nice watch and it is totally worth the money spent on it. And I wouldn't say that it is 10 times less good than the Speedmaster. The Speedmaster is you could arguably say a better quote-unquote watch in some ways. That it is historical and it's horological and all of that other stuff. But so is this one. So at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, it's up to what do you want in a watch, what are you looking for, and in this case, this is a great space watch at a great price, and frankly, you're going to really enjoy owning it. Now, I had taken the strap off at one end to make it easier to look at the back. So what I'm going to do is, through the magic of video editing, I am going to put the strap back together. So here we are. And before we throw it on the wrist, let's do some basic measurements. Okay. It's, say 14 thick. Right, let's measure the width. I'll measure it from this point. We're looking at 45 as advertised, right? It is pretty big, lug to lug. It's 52, say 53. And the lug width is 20, so you could put a lot on it. Now, one of the things, let's talk a little bit aesthetics before I put it on. One of the things that I was not thrilled with is that they have like a bead blasted case. You see, very nice finish, very satiny, polished bezel. I like the way the contrast, it looks nice, but then you've got the brushed bracelet. It's a nice bracelet, it's quite substantial. Pins, doesn't matter to me. I'm not as long as it stays on and it comes off when it's supposed to. It's double deployant. It's got a nice little tuning fork, the Accutron, the Bulova tuning fork. They adopted it as their symbol because of the success of the Accutron. It's not stamped. It is forged deployant. And it's got a very nice little bit of a curvature to the links. It's got a very nice, comfortable fit. Now, wristwatch check. I'm wearing the quintessential pilot's watch. I'm wearing my Navitimer. This is the GMT model. There is a video on this watch and how to use the slide rule in the archive. Take a look. So here we go. Boom, boom, boom. Throw this on. I've got an 18 centimeter wrist, and it's about 60 millimeters top to bottom before the knuckle. So as you see, even though this is a pretty big watch, it still fits quite nicely. Now talk about big watch, this is a 44 and this is a 45. There's only 1 millimeter difference between the two watches. And this still looks bigger, but that's also because the white slide rule bezel tends to bring in the face of the watch optically and makes it a little harder to see. I mean, not harder to see, but you know what I mean, in comparison to it shrinks it. But the actual outer dimensions of the watch are only off by 1 millimeter. Now, again, it's a really nice looking watch. Wears well, doesn't move around a lot, and it's not even that tight on my wrist. All right, but doesn't move around a lot, has a nice fit, and I didn't even adjust it from my friend's sizing. So when you want to talk about a really nice piece at a really good price that you can wear and feel sporty and feel, techy and geeky, and yet not worry about going swimming with it, or I wouldn't go deeply, but you could splash around in a pool with it and wash your hands or do the dishes and not worry about it. Wear it to the shower. If you're on a trip, you don't have to worry about taking it off when you go into the shower. It's a really good watch to own. So Bulova Lunar Pilot, a really great watch. Let's turn the camera around and call it a day. there's a loom shot. Very nicely done indices and hands. So that was the Bulova Moon Pilot, a really nice watch, an excellent value, and a good daily wear for someone who doesn't really want something too expensive or flashy, but wants a good, reliable piece that'll tell him or her the time reliably and well, with a nice, very, very accurate quartz movement in it with a really good chronograph function. So thanks for taking the time again. Please subscribe, and until next time, thanks.